Hey guys, welcome back to another video at Jensen's Reptiles. I'm sorry that it's been a moment since I made a video. I haven't been very well, but I'm feeling a bit better now, so hopefully I can get you some more videos more frequently. But today I wanted to talk about my Rainbow Boa upgraded enclosure. So forgive the reflection on the glass over that side. I'll show you in just a sec. This is a 4-foot wide Viv Exotic. It's 2 feet high and 1.5 feet deep. Skittles' previous enclosure was about 3 foot by 1.5 by 1.5, so it's a fairly decent upgrade for her. She's got quite big now, so definitely needed more space. And when we did upgrade her, there were a few things that we wanted to do differently as well. So let me show you inside. In Skittles' previous enclosure, it was heated with a reptile radiator, which for a little 3-foot enclosure, it was doing the job just fine. Humidity was good without too much intervention. We were just spraying down the enclosure every few days. But this enclosure is obviously taller and wider, so rather than having a reptile radiator working its ass off, we've put in the higher wattage Arcadia deep heat. So if you haven't heard of this, definitely go have a read about it. It's a really cool product. I'll do a product review on it at some point down the line, but if you are interested, just go check it out on their website. I'll drop a link below. And we also thought that Skittles would benefit from some UV as well. So she has done a little bit of basking so far, which is fantastic. It's really nice to see. And her colours under the UV light are absolutely incredible. The rest of the tank is lit with white python LEDs, which are just up there. So that's what we've got going on for heating and lighting. Now, any of you who keep a rainbow boa or are interested in keeping a rainbow boa know that humidity plays a really important role in their well-being. So for the first time, we've actually invested in a hygrostat, which is from Inkbird. I'll show you that in just a sec. But as you can see, the enclosure is currently filling with mist. So rather than spraying down the enclosure and having Skittles sit on this wet ground, which is not really ideal because rainbow boas really thrive with a high humidity but a fairly decent airflow as well, we've gone for a mister. So the ventilation in this enclosure is pretty good. It's got 4 vents. I'm just trying to show you in the back left corner there, up at the top, and here as well, and there are 2 of those on each side. So ventilation is pretty good, which means that we wanted to make sure that the humidity was controlled even when we're not home, or in any situation where we're not kind of on top of it all the time, because I was a little bit worried that in an enclosure like this, humidity would disperse really quickly. Whilst I'm talking about humidity, one other thing I just want to mention is that when you're using a melamine enclosure like this for an animal that needs high humidity, make sure you seal every single exposed surface of the enclosure. And I don't mean obviously the boarding, I mean all of the edges, any crevices, any cracks, all of it. In this enclosure there were some screw holes in the ceiling because this was Pixel's old enclosure. So obviously filling those with silicone as well to make sure that there's no moisture getting in. What will happen is that the boarding inside will just expand and start to rot. That's really not what you want. So make sure you put the time in, do a really good job setting it up, and the enclosure will last you ages. Alright, let me take you over the other side and I will talk a little bit about what we're doing with the humidity here. Okay, so this is the side that the humidity comes in. So we've got the hose from the mister coming through the vent there, plant in front of it to disperse it a little bit, and it does its job, starts to cover the ground. Now the probe is actually up here because what we want to be measuring is the humidity in the air, not so much on the ground, because as you can tell in these really misty areas that's going to be high really quickly. Now that's fine, but what we don't want is the mister feeling like it has to work not hard enough to produce just the ground humidity. So that's why we've got the sensor up there for now, and we are running it for a bit to see how it works. and for the last week and a half it's been absolutely fantastic. As I said, we're using the Inkbird hygrostat, which also has the option to install a fan on the same stat, and you set your parameters to basically say, okay, this is the level I want my humidity at. If it goes too high, turn the fan on, drop it a little bit. If it goes too low, turn on the mister, and you can set all of your parameters. So for us, we've set the humidity that we want to 85%. Now, once it reaches 85 up here, the humidity on the ground is around 90 to 95, which is exactly where we want it to be. And we've set the mister to come on if the probe up here is only getting a reading of 80%, which means that this mister comes on probably about 4 or 5 times a day, which is perfect. We haven't got a fan installed at the moment because, as I said, the ventilation in this Viv is great. But in the summertime, when it's quite warm and muggy, if you're using a stat like that for another animal, then definitely whack a fan on it. You can use a USB computer fan attached to a plug socket and you're good to go. Nice and cheap, and it keeps your animal really healthy and happy, which is great. So if you do have any questions about that side of things, as usual, drop them in the comments below, and I'm more than happy to have a chat and help you out with anything you need. As far as the rest of the enclosure goes, you can see the substrate that I use, I spoke about in a substrate video recently. Go and check that out, and you can see the full mix there, what it's made up of and why. And then, yeah, just as usual, I really like to give my snakes branches. I think it's absolutely imperative that they move and climb and have a decent amount of enrichment in their enclosure. Without that movement, without that willing to climb, what you get is really obese snakes, which sucks. Means they don't live as long, they're not as healthy, probably not as happy either. So definitely worthwhile adding some things into there. That being said, it does not replace getting your snakes out and interacting with them if that's what you want to do. So make sure that however you keep your snakes, they're getting that opportunity to move their bodies. Just like us, if we didn't move all the time but we ate the same amount, we'd get really fat. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind that your snake will need enrichment. So yeah, that's Skittles' new enclosure. As I said, if you've got any questions at all, just drop them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already and you want to, I'd love to have you around, so give it some thought. And I will catch up with you guys soon. To think, I was about to end the video without showing Skittles herself. She's currently in shed at the moment, so her colours are a little bit duller than usual. She's currently trying to go up my sleeve. Go on, in you go. How'd it go? So there she is. So anyone that's been watching for a while, you can see just how big she's got. She really was a little shoelace when we got her, so she's grown a hell of a lot. She'll probably need a bigger enclosure than this at some point, which is fine, she'll get one. But so far, she seems to be absolutely loving the new climbing spaces. The new substrate seems to be working a treat. And obviously the humidity is spot on for what she needs. So, happy snake, yay!